Have you ever felt like your mind is a crowded room, filled with noise, memories, worries, and voices that refuse to quiet down? You try to rest, but your thoughts keep racing. You search for peace, but it always seems just one breath out of reach. What if the clarity you seek isn't in adding more, but in letting go? These 5 timeless Buddhist lessons are not quick fixes. They are doorways, leading you back to the stillness that's been waiting within you all along. Welcome to Trandy Wisdom, where every story is truly captivating. In this episode, we'll journey through 5 powerful teachings rooted in ancient Buddhist wisdom. Each one a gentle step toward clearing the mental fog we all carry. From releasing the weight of unnecessary thoughts to reconnecting with nature. From transforming inner criticism into self-compassion to discovering stillness in everyday moments. These are not distant ideals, but practices you can begin today. You don't need to escape to a mountain. You only need to pause, breathe, and return. Because peace is not something you chase. It's something you uncover, layer by layer, thought by thought. 1. Let go of mental clutter. In the dry season of the ancient Gangetic Plains, where the land breathes in golden heat and exhales dust that settles on banyan roots and temple stones, the mind of a wandering monk mirrors the landscape, thick with memory. Scorched by desire and longing for a cleansing rain, he walks barefoot, not just through geography, but through the thickets of thought. To walk, in this tradition, is not merely a movement of the body. It is a return to the mind, a step toward its unburdening. Letting go of mental clutter is not a spiritual cliché in the teachings of early Buddhism. It is survival. Just as a field cannot grow grain until it is cleared of thorns and rocks, the mind cannot grow insight while overgrown with attachments, regrets, comparisons, and noise. This lesson is not taught in grand speeches. It is whispered through observation, of clouds that pass without clinging, of rivers that carry silt away, of forests that shed old leaves without grieving. In one of the earliest recorded texts, the Buddha sat beneath a fig tree not to attain something, but to let go of everything that was no longer needed. He did not add truths to his mind. He subtracted. What remained was clarity, like a lake no longer stirred by storms. Today, thousands of years later, the problem persists in a modern form. Instead of wandering thoughts about survival, food, or shelter, the modern mind is cluttered by pings, headlines, opinions, memories of failures, anticipations of imaginary futures. It is a crowded marketplace where silence is rare and inner space is occupied by the noise of everything we've ever heard or feared. The first lesson in clearing the mind is not to silence it by force. A clenched fist cannot release. Instead, the mind must be approached like an overstuffed room. You do not burn the room down. You open the windows. You examine what's inside. You ask what belongs to you and what never did. The Buddha taught that the source of suffering is tanha, craving. But clutter often masquerades as craving's quieter sibling, holding on. We hold on to identities, opinions, resentments, unresolved conversations, things left unsaid. We hold on to the person we wish we had become. We hold on to stories where we were either the victim or the victor. And all this holding fills the mind like stagnant air in a closed jar. In a monastery near the ancient capital of Magadha, a novice monk was once asked why his walking meditation seemed so peaceful. He replied, "Because each step I take, I leave behind what I was just thinking." His feet touched the ground, but his mind floated free, not because it was empty in the shallow sense, but because it had room to breathe. Mental clutter is not only thoughts, it is the resistance to thoughts, the judgment of them, the guilt for having them. A Buddhist master once said, "You don't drown by falling into the water. You drown by staying submerged." Thoughts arise. Letting go means not swimming after them every time. The practice is subtle and slow, like water eroding stone. You sit, you breathe. A thought arises. I should have done better yesterday. Another follows. They misunderstood me. You notice. You do not engage. You do not argue. You do not fix. You let it pass. Not by force, by gentleness, like clouds across the monsoon sky. In Buddhist psychology, the concept of vitakka vikara, initial and sustained thought, is central. A beginner's mind clings to both. An awakened mind learns to see them arise and vanish like sparks from firewood. This recognition is the beginning of liberation, not because one escapes life, but because one finally lives with it unburdened. Letting go is not a single event. It is a daily discipline. 1,000 small releases, 1,000 moments of mercy toward the self. It is not the same as forgetting. It is remembering without the pain. It is not detachment in the cold sense. It is freedom in the warm sense. A freedom to not be owned by what no longer serves your path. Modern neuroscience, in an unexpected harmony with ancient insight, confirms what the early monks intuited. Cluttered thoughts reduce working memory, increase stress hormones, impair decision-making. A brain constantly preoccupied cannot regulate emotion. The mind, like a garden, must be tended, or else wild vines of anxiety and habit overtake it. But letting go is not an act of rejection. It is an act of space-making. The empty bowl does not reject rice. It simply waits. The quiet room is not useless. It is sacred. When you remove the clutter of mental noise, what remains is attention. And with attention comes awareness. And with awareness, compassion. In one of the Jataka tales, the moral parables of the Buddha's former lives, there is a story of a merchant who carries a sack too heavy for the road. He refuses to lighten the load, believing every object is essential. Halfway through the journey, the strap breaks, the load spills. He's forced to choose only what matters. He arrives lighter, wiser, and alive. The story is a metaphor for our spiritual path. What must you put down to keep walking? Is it the need to be right, the fear of disappointing others, the image of who you used to be? In the solitude of a Himalayan cave, monks sit for days with nothing but their breath and the cold stone floor. They report no visions, no cosmic sounds, just space. And in that space, a subtle joy, the joy of nothing extra, the joy of just this. Letting go of mental clutter is not just for monasteries or mountaintops. It is for you reading this, perhaps with a dozen browser tabs open, a phone buzzing, a deadline looming. It is for the parent who is awake at 2 a.m., replaying a mistake. It is for the student who fears not being enough. It is for the elder who looks back with more regret than pride. It is for all of us. The Buddha's first act after enlightenment wasn't to teach a doctrine. It was to sit in stillness. For 7 weeks, beneath trees and by rivers, he remained silent, not because he had nothing to say, but because he had let everything else go. When he finally spoke, it was not to add noise, but to offer direction toward the clearing, the stillness, the unburdened way. To let go of mental clutter is not to empty the mind of thoughts. It is to empty it of grasping. It is to make space for truth to arise, quietly, like dawn over the Ganges, soft, slow, and enough. And so, you begin. You do not need a temple. You do not need robes. You do not even need perfect silence. You need only this breath and the courage to stop carrying what is no longer yours. 2. Practice mindfulness. In the lowland forests, near the foothills of ancient Kosala, as dawn stretches its first golden fingers across rice paddies and thatched rooftops, a monk steps out into the morning mist. He holds nothing but his alms bowl and the presence of his breath. The path beneath his feet is not merely earth, it is time itself unfolding. Each step is deliberate, each movement a conversation with now. This is not just walking, it is mindfulness in motion. Mindfulness, known in the Pali language as sati, is among the most misunderstood practices in both ancient and modern worlds. To many, it sounds like a technique, something to be learned in weekend workshops or 50-minute guided sessions. But in the earliest Buddhist teachings, mindfulness was never just a tool. It was the foundation of all awakening. Without it, nothing can be known clearly. With it, everything begins to soften, to make sense, to reveal its impermanence. To practice mindfulness is not to escape the world. It is to enter it fully. It is not to sit on a mountain and forget your name. It is to sip tea and actually taste it. To hear a child's laughter and let it echo inside your ribs. To wash a dish and feel the water, not as a task, but as a touch of the sacred. In the Satipatthana Sutta, one of the most revered texts in the Buddhist canon, the Buddha outlines 4 foundations of mindfulness: the body, feelings, the mind, and mental objects. These are not dogmas. They are lenses through which we begin to see reality as it truly is, without adornment, without distortion. When a practitioner sits in silence and feels the breath rising and falling, they are not performing a ritual. They are returning home. Imagine a drop of water falling onto a still lake. That is mindfulness. The surface may ripple, but it is no longer stirred by storms. The mind, which once chased every sound, image, and thought, now begins to rest in its own clarity. But clarity does not come easily. The modern mind, fractured by devices and demands, resists stillness. It is addicted to distraction. Mindfulness, then, becomes a radical act, not of rebellion, but of remembrance. We remember that we are not machines. We remember that being is more important than doing. We remember the breath. The breath, often overlooked, is the bridge between the body and the mind. It is the only thing we carry from birth to death. And yet, it is the thing we most often ignore. When we return to the breath, we return to life as it is, not as we wish it to be. One breath, fully known, is worth more than 1,000 thoughts unexamined. In a monastery near Rajgir, a young novice once asked his teacher, "How do I know if I am truly practicing mindfulness?" The teacher did not answer with words. He pointed to a leaf trembling in the morning wind. The novice watched. He watched until he saw not just a leaf, but movement, life, change. "You were mindful," the teacher finally said, when the leaf was no longer just a leaf. This is the subtle gift of mindfulness. It does not add new experiences to our lives. It deepens the ones we already have. The bowl of rice becomes a universe. The sound of rain becomes music. The silence between words becomes poetry. In early Buddhism, mindfulness is also closely linked to ethical living. To be mindful is to see the consequences of one's actions in real time. It is to witness the seed of anger before it blooms into speech. It is to notice the spark of greed before it becomes a wildfire. In this way, mindfulness becomes a guardian, not by force, but by awareness. Like a lamp in a dark cave, it reveals without judgment. Yet, mindfulness is not always peaceful. To sit with yourself, truly and without distraction, is to encounter everything you have avoided. Old memories rise. Regrets surface. The body aches. The mind resists. This is not failure. This is the doorway. The teachings are clear. Do not push these things away. Observe them. Know them. Let them pass like travelers who knock, but do not stay. In a cave carved into the red cliffs near the Ganges, a solitary monk meditated for years. When asked what he had gained from so much silence, he answered, "Nothing, but I have lost much: fear, hurry, hatred, and the need to be somewhere else." His words are not just poetic. They are the essence of mindfulness. It does not promise gain. It promises presence, and presence is the soil in which compassion, wisdom, and peace take root. There is also a myth that mindfulness is passive, that it dulls emotion or removes passion. But mindfulness is not numbness. It is intimacy. It allows us to feel more, not less, to grieve fully, to rejoice wholeheartedly, to listen without the itch to reply. A mindful person is not removed from life. They are embedded in it, like a tree rooted in the earth, yet touched by every breeze. Science, in its own language, is now catching up to what the ancients knew. MRI scans show that regular mindfulness practice changes the structure of the brain, strengthening areas related to memory, empathy, and emotional regulation. But even this is secondary. The real gift of mindfulness is not in what it changes, but in what it reveals. The monk walking at dawn does not seek enlightenment in some distant realm. He seeks it in the way his foot meets the soil, the way the sunlight kisses his skin, the way the world moves when one truly pays attention. And in that paying attention, something remarkable happens. The separation between self and world begins to dissolve. There is no walker, only walking; no breather, only breath. To practice mindfulness, then, is to practice being alive, not in theory, but in sensation. It is to trust that this moment, exactly as it is, holds enough beauty, enough wisdom, enough life. And when that trust deepens, the need for control loosens its grip. The noise softens. The mind, once a battlefield, becomes a field of listening. And so, wherever you are reading this, from a quiet room, a bustling train, or beneath the fading light of evening, you can begin. You do not need silence to practice mindfulness. You need only willingness. Willingness to feel, to notice, to return. Because in the end, mindfulness is not a path we walk. It is the walking itself, not a thing we do, but the way we do all things. And the miracle is not far away. It is already here, waiting behind each breath you have not yet noticed. 3. Challenge negative thoughts. As the sun rises slowly over the banks of the Yamuna River, lighting the worn stones of a forgotten hermitage, a silence hangs in the air, thick, heavy, but alive. Not far from here, long ago, monks would sit in caves with their eyes closed, not to escape the world, but to confront its deepest echo, inside themselves. In the ancient Buddhist tradition, this echo has a name: the untrained mind. and within it dwells a quiet yet persistent force: negative thoughts. Unlike physical obstacles, boulders in a forest path, floods in a rice field, negative thoughts are invisible. They live in the private corners of our consciousness: unspoken fears, self-criticism, guilt, blame, envy, worthlessness. They arise not with trumpets, but with whispers, and their power lies not in their volume, but in their repetition. They become, over time, a lens through which we view ourselves and the world. But in early Buddhist teachings, the mind is not a battlefield to be won by force. It is a wilderness to be patiently explored, understood, and tamed. The Buddha, speaking not as a god but as a fellow human, described this process in plain terms. The mind, he said, is like a chariot pulled by wild horses. Without training, it follows wherever the senses or fears lead it. But with discipline, the reins are returned to the hands of awareness. To challenge negative thoughts, then, is not to suppress them. It is to turn and face them with the full light of mindfulness and compassion. In the Pali Canon, there is a term, Vitakka Santhana, the calming of thoughts. It does not imply the immediate vanishing of negativity. Instead, it teaches 5 methods: replacing the thought, examining its danger, ignoring it, understanding its cause, and applying mental restraint. Each method is not a rule book, but a doorway. For the wandering monk beneath the fig tree, for the modern reader amid digital storms, the challenge is the same. How do we sit with the storm without becoming the storm? Let us return to the forest. A novice monk has just begun his training. On the 3rd night, his mind is swarmed with thoughts. I'm not good enough. I'll never be enlightened. I miss the world I left. These are not philosophical questions. They are emotional tremors, deeply human. His teacher, watching his restlessness, does not offer dogma. He offers presence. See the thought, he says. Name it. Ask, is it true? Is it useful? Is it kind? And so the monk sits. The thought returns. I'm not good enough. But this time, instead of flinching, he breathes. He names it, self-doubt. He does not argue. He does not agree. He lets the thought stand, observed. And in that observation, the thought begins to lose its power. This is not magic. It is awareness. The first weapon against negative thinking is not positive thinking. It is clear seeing. When you notice a thought, you interrupt its loop. When you label it, you separate your identity from it. You are not a failure. You are a person experiencing a thought of failure. In Buddhist psychology, the concept of anatta, non-self, offers a profound liberation. You are not your thoughts. You are not the mind that thinks them. You are the awareness behind them. And awareness is never damaged, never broken, never hateful. It simply sees. In a desert cave centuries ago, a monk wrote this on a stone wall. The mind that believes the lie suffers. The mind that sees the lie is free. That lie remains, even if the monk's name has been forgotten. What he challenged was not the external world, but the internal narrative, the quiet voice that says, "You're not worthy. You're alone. You'll always be this way." Such thoughts often have roots in early wounds, unmet expectations, disappointments that hardened into identity. But the Buddha taught that all things conditioned are impermanent, including our beliefs about ourselves. The thought may return, but it need not be welcomed as truth. The gatekeeper has awakened. Modern science, with its own instruments, agrees. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, a practice grounded in Buddhist insight, though developed in a Western frame, teaches patients to identify distorted thinking, catastrophizing, personalizing, black and white judgments. Once seen, these patterns can be restructured. Neuroscience shows that even well-worn neural pathways can be rerouted. The brain, like the mind, can change, but only if we see it first. Still, we mustn't romanticize this process. To challenge negative thoughts is not to live in constant sunshine. It is to learn to walk through the shadows with a steady torch. Some days, the torch flickers. Some days, the shadows feel like giants. But every step taken in mindfulness strengthens the walker. Every time we return to the breath, we reclaim a bit of inner ground. There is a teaching from the Buddha where he compares thoughts to guests who come to visit. Some are pleasant, others are rude, but none stay forever. The wise practitioner opens the door to each guest, not to embrace, not to fight, but simply to greet. Ah, sadness has arrived. Hello, anger. And then, to bow and let them pass. In a remote valley temple, an old monk was asked by a traveler how to get rid of anxious thoughts. The monk smiled. When you no longer fear them, they vanish on their own. His eyes sparkled not with denial, but with deep knowing. He had lived with many storms and had learned that the sky does not hate the clouds. The Buddhist path is not a path of thoughtlessness. It is a path of wise relationship to thought. It is the cultivation of yoniso manasikara, wise attention, to place attention not just on the content of thought, but on its nature, its origin, its tendency to arise and fade. To challenge a negative thought is not to bulldoze it. It is to ask it, where did you come from? What are you protecting me from? Do you still belong here? In that questioning, there is dignity, there is patience, there is a quiet revolution. And so, wherever you are now, caught in loops of self-doubt, old shame, quiet sadness, begin not with resistance, but with inquiry. Sit with the thought, name it, breathe beside it, and most importantly, do not believe it on first glance. Let the light of awareness do its slow work. Because the truth is this, you aren't unbroken. Your mind is not an enemy. It is a wild field learning how to grow again. And every negative thought you meet with compassion is a weed no longer rooted, a burden no longer carried. This is the third lesson. It is not easy, but it is powerful. And it begins, always, with a single breath. 4. Connect with nature. Before there were temples, before sutras were carved into stone or inked onto palm leaves, there was the forest. It was beneath a tree that the Buddha awakened. It was among trees that he taught, and it was to trees, rivers, and mountains that he often returned, not for escape, but for remembrance. In the stillness of nature, he found not silence, but truth. To connect with nature is not a side practice in the Buddhist path. It is the path. The Buddha lived not in palaces, but under open skies. He did not seek isolation from the world of forms. He sought intimacy with it. His teachings were not recited beneath ceilings, but beneath canopies of leaves. Birds were not background noise. They were reminders of impermanence. The wind was not a disturbance. It was a metaphor for the unseen. The forests of northern India, where Buddhism first took root, were not simply scenery. They were co-teachers. The whisper of bamboo became a call to presence. The rhythm of rain on lotus leaves became a chant of simplicity. The red dust of the trail taught humility. And the snake in the underbrush reminded every traveler that mindfulness is not just a virtue, it is a necessity. Today, Most of us live far from those forests. We walk on concrete, breathe in machines, and forget what unfiltered sky looks like. But nature has not gone. It is still there, waiting, not only outside our doors, but within our capacity to see again. To connect with nature is to awaken the part of us that remembers we were never separate. The trees do not belong to us, but we belong to the trees. The air is not ours to control, but it moves through us regardless. The body itself is made of earth, bones from minerals, breath from wind, blood from water. In forgetting this, the mind becomes heavy. In remembering, it begins to clear. In the ancient texts, the Buddha often instructed his disciples to retreat into nature, not to abandon the world, but to touch it more deeply. Go to the forest, he said. Sit at the foot of a tree. There, the distractions of society fade. Status, comparison, judgment, all dissolve in the presence of an old tree that does not care who you are, only that you are present. A young monk once asked his master why they always meditated in the open, surrounded by grass, insects, and birds. The master replied, "Because the forest does not flatter you. It does not argue. It just is. And so, you learn to be, too." The power of nature in Buddhist thought lies not in its beauty, but in its honesty. A river does not pretend. It flows. A storm does not apologize. It arrives. It passes. The moon waxes and wanes. The seasons cycle through birth, aging, death, and renewal. Nature embodies the core teachings of the Buddha: impermanence, interdependence, and non-self. To connect with nature, then, is to meditate with open eyes. It is to walk not with a destination, but with awareness. To notice the shape of a leaf, the way light shifts through a cloud, the scent of soil after rain. Each detail becomes a koan, a riddle pointing back to what has always been present, the miracle of now. There is a place along the lower slopes of the Himalayas where a monastery was built without walls. The monks there live with wind as their guest, with deer as their neighbors. They say they can tell the hour by the color of the light on the stones. They do not speak often, because the forest speaks enough. In this silence, not emptiness, but fullness arises, the fullness of belonging. Modern life tends to frame nature as something to visit, a weekend escape, a distant vacation. But, in Buddhist insight, nature isn't a retreat. It is the original teacher. Before the Buddha offered words, he offered example by simply sitting under the Bodhi tree. That act, in itself, is a teaching. Do not chase knowledge. Sit with the world. Let it reveal itself. Science now supports what the monks knew centuries ago. Exposure to nature lowers cortisol, reduces anxiety, enhances memory, but these are byproducts. The real gift is subtler, a reconnection to a rhythm older than language, a pace where nothing is rushed and nothing is wasted, where even fallen leaves nourish the soil, and even decay has dignity. The monk in the forest learns not just to sit in stillness, but to walk with reverence. Each footstep is soft. Each breath is an exchange with the trees. Gratitude is not spoken. It is felt. In the way one avoids crushing a flower. In the way one pauses to watch a dragonfly balance on a reed. To connect with nature is also to confront suffering. In the natural world, death is not hidden. A bird eats a worm. A branch breaks. A fire sweeps through a dry valley. But none of this is evil. It is simply what is. The Buddha did not ask us to avoid suffering. He asked us to understand it. Nature offers that understanding, not in abstraction, but in reality. It shows that all things end, and in their ending, new things begin. The mind, when filled with clutter and agitation, often reflects the world we've built, fast, loud, crowded. But a mind returned to nature begins to mirror its host. It slows, it softens, it watches more than it speaks. It listens. One evening in the dry season, a traveler sat by a monk under a bael tree. "Why don't you speak more of the gods?" he asked. The monk pointed to the fireflies blinking over the grass. "Ah, what more do you want?" he said. "Isn't this enough divinity for one night?" And perhaps it is. To connect with nature is not to seek visions or signs. It is to sit beneath the stars and remember that the same elements that burn in the sky once burned in you, that the rivers outside mirror the flow of your own veins, that you, too, are nature, not a visitor, but a part. So walk, barefoot, if you can. Sit under a tree. Breathe with the wind. Watch the moon grow and fade, and in doing so, you will not become less human. You will become more whole. This is the fourth lesson. Its truth is older than Scripture. Its invitation is always open, and its temple has no walls. 5. Practice self-compassion and gratitude. In a remote monastery perched on the cliffs of the Vindhya Hills, the morning sun filters through cracks in the stone, casting long, golden fingers across the silent hall where monks sit cross-legged, eyes lowered, hearts open. It is not doctrine they meditate on this morning, but something quieter, more vulnerable. The simple act of kindness, not toward others, but toward themselves. In the ancient Buddhist world, compassion, karuna, is not a gentle afterthought. It is the beating heart of the path. And within its embrace, there is a special kind of tenderness reserved for the one person we often forget to include in our circle of care. Ourselves. This is self-compassion, not indulgence, not escape, but the willingness to meet our own suffering with the same tenderness we would offer a stranger. The Buddha never demanded perfection. He did not speak in terms of guilt or punishment. He spoke of dukkha, the inevitable pain woven into existence, and the ways we add unnecessary suffering to it. One of those ways is through the cruelty we turn inward, the harsh inner voice that says, "You should have done better. You are not enough. You don't deserve peace." That voice, he taught, is not wisdom. It is a habit born of forgetting our own humanity. To practice self-compassion is to wake up from that forgetting. There is a story told in the monasteries of the Ganges Plain about a monk who, in his early years, was so burdened by guilt that he refused to sleep indoors. Rain or cold, he sat beneath trees, punishing himself for every mistake. One night, an elder monk found him shivering and asked, "Would you speak this way to a dying dog?" The younger monk, shocked, said, "No." "Then why do you speak that way to yourself?" That is the turning point for many of us. We begin the spiritual path with great discipline, great effort, great desire to be good or enlightened or whole, but we carry with us the weight of old shame, the armor of self-blame. We meditate with tension. We bow with unspoken self-hatred. We seek awakening while secretly believing we are not worthy of it. But the forest does not ask us to be worthy of its beauty. The wind does not wait for us to improve before it sings through the trees. In nature, everything belongs. The crooked tree, the broken branch, the moss-covered rock. And so too, in the awakened heart, everything is allowed. even the parts of ourselves we've tried to hide. Self-compassion begins not with a technique, but with a shift in seeing. It is to look at your flaws and not flinch. It is to hold your regrets the way you might hold a wounded bird, not to fix, but to care. It is to say, yes, I have fallen short. Yes, I have caused pain. And still, I am worthy of kindness. This is not moral laziness. It is moral clarity. In Buddhist psychology, hiri and ottappa, moral shame and moral fear, are wholesome traits when paired with compassion. They help us see the harm we've caused. Without collapsing into self-loathing, they invite change, not through punishment, but through awareness. The Buddha himself offered the Metta Sutta, the discourse on loving kindness, as a medicine for the restless heart. In it, practitioners are encouraged to radiate kindness outward, to all beings, near and far, but only after first cultivating that same warmth toward themselves. Let one cultivate a boundless heart toward all beings. The sutta says, even as a mother protects her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. That includes the one who meditates, the one who stumbles, the one who weeps alone. And where self-compassion blooms, gratitude follows like a flower turning toward the sun. Gratitude in Buddhism is not a fleeting emotion. It is a practice of perception. It is not the denial of suffering, but the recognition of blessings even within it. A cracked bowl still holds rice. A tired body still breathes. A sorrowful heart still longs to love. These are not small things. There is an old saying from the northern monasteries, the one who sees beauty in the ordinary is never poor. A monk sweeping the temple courtyard bows before the dust. A traveler kneels to drink from a stream. A child watches ants carrying crumbs. In each act, there is reverence, and reverence is the soul of gratitude. Gratitude does not require abundance. It requires attention, the morning breeze through open shutters, the kindness of a stranger's smile, the warmth of sunlight on the skin after a cold night. When we notice these things, we train the mind to see what is here, not what is missing. In a desert monastery beyond the reach of the city's noise, a teacher once led his students in a gratitude meditation at dawn. Today, he whispered, be grateful not because life is easy, but because you are awake to it. And with that, the monks bowed, not to a god, not to an idea, but to the simple miracle of being alive. Practicing gratitude does not mean denying pain. It means allowing the heart to be wide enough to hold both joy and sorrow, failure and grace. It means saying thank you not just for what pleases us, but for what teaches us. The illness that made us slow down, the heartbreak that opened our eyes, the loss that deepened our love. In Buddhist thought, this balance is vital. Too much guilt, and the path becomes a burden. Too much comfort, and it becomes complacency. But self-compassion steadies the heart. Gratitude brightens the path. Together, they make the journey not only possible, but beautiful. To sit in self-compassion and gratitude is to sit in truth. Not the truth of perfection, but the truth of connection. You are not separate from life. You are not a mistake. You are a part of the great unfolding, as worthy as the mountain, as necessary as the rain. And so, take a breath. Place a hand over your own heart. Listen not for answers, but for the quiet rhythm of your own aliveness. Say thank you, not for what you have, but for what you are. And offer to yourself the gentleness the world so often forgets to give. This is the fifth lesson. It is the softest, and perhaps the strongest. It does not shout. It does not shine. It waits. And when you are ready, it welcomes you home. If this journey spoke to your heart, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who may need a little peace today. Until next time, stay present, stay kind. This is Trandy Wisdom.